Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Disturbing nightmares. Tell us about any recent disturbing nightmares that you've had. I'll start. In bed, in that in-between state of waking and dreaming. Lucid enough to think that I need to check my phone. Do so. See a video pop up titled something along the lines of disturbing images. The video depicts a number of different planets alien to the ones in our own solar system. Each has a vaguely humanoid face shaped into the surface, expressing some form of pain, agony, or horror. The image quality is poor, with heavy amounts of static and distortion, as if some barely functioning probe had taken the photos. There is a loud, unpleasant droning noise that almost sounds like someone screaming in the distance. Wake up. I have no idea what my subconscious was trying to tell me with this. I do not fear threats from beyond the stars, though perhaps some would interpret this as a vision of dangers far beyond our own solar system. I'm interested in hearing about any other nightmares people have had recently, or if anyone has had a nightmare like this themselves in general. Pic-related is kind of what the planets looked like.
Had this one particular nightmare maybe some 25 or 30 times in my life, still remember the first time I ever dreamed it. I'm in this large open area. Imagine a hangar for airplanes. There is no visible light source, but there is clearly some ambient lighting. Like the moonlight on a relatively clear night, in the center there is what I believe to be a huge, emaciated, worn, and raggy ribcage. The ribcage has its own presence the closer I get. This overwhelming sense of dread and ominous atmosphere just builds up out of nowhere. I don't really know how to describe it, but it's almost as if all 5 senses are being suppressed. That's typically where it ends. 2021 October time frame. I had an unreal amount of sleep paralysis and nightmares basically every night. A few stand out for various reasons, but the most comforting, bizarre one would be when one of our cats had died. I buried him in the backyard, took a shower, didn't think too much about it, but the next day I immediately knew I was having sleep paralysis. I was under my blanket, so I didn't see it, but I can feel this small animal sitting on my side, around the size of a cat. I cannot move in the slightest, not even the usual wiggle my toes then feet to get out of it. The moment I thought to myself, is this the cat I buried yesterday? I instantly woke up and sure as shit, no cats in my room. All of the cats were outside for almost an hour up to this point.
One that happened recently probably came out of my run-in with a cult, breaking into multiple apartments and looting stuff. Don't really know why. As far as I can tell, I'm just doing it for the hell of it. Wherever I am, it is really dense, and I can jump between open windows from buildings really close together. Jump into this one apartment, and immediately recognize it as the kind of style of living space that cultists use. The drawings, the string on the roof, the messiness, the tapestry. All of it is recognizable despite not really knowing which specific cultist this might be. I get that sinking feeling, and the whole feeling of the dream just instantly changes from weird fun to tense and worrying. I'm wearing the stuff I usually wear in real life for identity protection, so not concerned. Decide not to loot shit but look around anyway. All stuff that's recognizable. Nobody home. Enter the bedroom. Nothing but a mattress on the floor, a bunch of string, and a standing mirror that just looks like a black void instead of a mirror. Can stick my hand through it. It's just an empty void inside the mirror. Knowing what that means, I decided to GTFO. When walking towards the front door to leave, it opens, and the creature I recognize as the thing they worship walks in. The thing was leaning down at first but stands up as it gets inside. It's about 7 or 8 feet tall, charred black skin. Looks like if you stretched dead skin over a very elongated metal human skeleton. I was staring at the thing's face, but cannot remember it at all other than that massive Cheshire smile it has. It was staring down at me too. Wake up the second it starts sprinting towards me. It isn't the scariest I've had, but I woke up crying. I really hate the people who worship that thing. I hate what they did to my friend, and I hate what they do to each other. My nightmares tend to be vivid, and I am usually some degree of lucid during them, if that puts it into perspective.
I didn't find it that disturbing, and it was a while since I had it, but it was proper /X/. It's been about a month ago, so I may not remember too much. Not gonna Greentext it since it's already hard to recall and describe things without making it ADHD digestible. Though I'll try to not be too elaborate. Apologies, I am not a writer. And yes, it was all one dream, just a long one and covering many days. In the dream, I was visiting my IRL aunt's farm, just next to a small town, albeit looking a bit different. It was all right till one day while on the sidewalk, things on the streets, like carts, random items, and metal parts were following me for a bit part of the way, back at the farm. One of the buildings was a bit different than it is IRL, and in the dream turned into some sort of sleeping quarters for a bunch of young adults, college kids, and me for some reason. They were all right, regular friendly folks. Fast forward as my days with them pass by as we do normal daily life stuff, but also there start random glitches in reality appearing, for example. A cat approaches me, suddenly freezes, its eyes turn red and the whole animal starts looking like a dead, stuffed animal. I lifted it up and it was stiff, slightly hard to touch, just with a little bit of give. Whenever something like that happened, if I was inside and looked out the window, I could see in the distance, beyond the farm's plot, small, pinkish or grayish humanoids wearing little but some belts and bandoliers holding staffs or spears, again far away, couldn't see details or faces clearly. In the beginning there was only one or so, running away if I've noticed it. Then as such events kept happening, I could sometimes notice a few more, staring back at me, as if they'd know where I am even if I ducked or looked through tiny window, as if they could home in on me even through walls. If and when they finally were leaving, the animals and everything else was getting back to norm. A few times I was with my aunt when it happened, and when I urged her to look out the window, she was getting that half-scared, half-confused or lost look before kind of freezing herself, as if she'd be lost in thought. And once the creatures disappeared, either I've seen them walk away or they were gone between one look out the window and another. She acted as if she saw nothing. Days continue passing in this way till one day I noticed the whole farm homestead started looking like it was deserted. Things inside covered in dust and or rotting, abandoned, no people anywhere, everything looking gray. Around that time I decided to find and confront the creatures, and then I woke up. That's it. Again, maybe nothing special, wasn't really scary, but it was spooky enough. I don't really think it was anything but just a dream, but it was a unique one.
Two semi-interesting ones in quick succession after a few weeks of unusually mundane ones. Was in the 4th grade with various classmates of different ranges there with me. Had class local field trips, nothing crazy, just wandered LA. Near the end I somehow visualize a building-sized UFO masquerading as a cloud, called it like Russian, but I think it was referring to the NHIs on board. Near the end, all of 4th grade is assembled, and I spot the cloud again, begin shouting and waving until everyone else joins in. It's heavily implied we were some special group, and the UFO was observing us, but not meant to be seen. Then I was this middle-aged man, not at all like me, trying to find his son, forgot most of the prelude, but ended up in these abandoned sewers, fighting wolf dogs and human golems, stout, grey with slight bluish glow, with a torch and blue stone club. Fall through a hole dot that transports me to the top of a pharma industry skyscraper. Square layout with vacant center opening, down several floors, all glass walls. Most rooms are nearly pitch black with crazed people roaming in them. Try to reach my son, but backtrack after I hear some kid rambling about hating his father while beating a corpse. End up in a well-lit conference room where I request my own file. Turns out I'm a MK Ultra agent, get shown multiple files from when I was a kid. Some have those online Mensa test patterns. No layout with questions, just the correct answer, along with some writing. Some have DNA double helix-like drawings. Some are just words and wild scribbling. Received my son. He coughs blood, so I kill him, knowing he was infected with whatever that other kid had. Too late as infection is already rapidly spreading throughout the building. Dream ends with me running to a house, cars crashing into stationary objects very avoidably, like the driver just gave up and let it.
I just woke up from the 3rd time I've had this one very specific reoccurring nightmare. Finally, I've decided to post about it, maybe because this time I can actually remember it. It's not exactly a recurring nightmare, as the plot, so to speak, has been advanced each time. It always starts the same way. I go to sleep and wake up around a manor. I could describe the house as grounds if people want. There is an older man here who throws a party every year, and I'm one of his guests. The first time it was just me. We talked and I found him very odd. Then he retired and left me to the grounds for the night. I went up to the library to do some reading, which has always been a trap. Reading there puts you to sleep and marks you to death, so to speak. This realm that I've been to thrice works on some odd mechanics. There is a girl entity that comes out sometime later on in the night, and this manor and realm belong to her. The old man is researching her, or maybe feeding her, I'm not quite sure. I do know that he is not an entity of the realm and is a normal human who the girl does not attack. You have 3 marks upon entering the manor. If all 3 are tallied up, something bad happens. I'm not sure what, though. You can get one from the girl catching you, being killed by any of the manor staff which lurk in the woods around it to prevent people's escapes, and by reading in the library. The first time I was there, I escaped. Escaping involves staying 3 tally free till morning, then the nightmare ends, and you're free. The second time I was there, it was a small party. I can remember being astonished to be back. The old man told me that he was now regularly throwing these parties and wanted me back for one. At that point, I could only really remember that I had been there before and had to rediscover the rules, and knew that later I would be hunted. It was on this trip that I found out about the manor staff. I was able to get out that time as well. With the sacrifice of many of my fellow invitees, then I came back again tonight. It was off the back of another dream, so not the first dream of the night, and this time I was just there with no greeting by the old man, just at the party. It was huge this time, with many guests and many servants attending them, immaculate food and entertainment. I didn't remember that I was about to be hunted till later on, where I then strode to the library to see if I could do anything about it. I looked at 2 books, one of which was a white cover with a whale on the front that I can't remember the name of. The other was titled The Death of God, and was essentially a dictionary that was printed on green pages with 1 word per page. I still couldn't remember the mechanics, thus ended up falling asleep and receiving 2 tallies in there. When I woke up, the hour of her awakening had come, and I finally remembered how she worked. Another mechanic that I have neglected to mention up till this point is that you can gain protection for a time by being a better guest. Then you will not be attacked by the girl. I have no clue how to gain this boon, only that when I led the girl into a crowd of people this time, she said good fathers don't get attacked. Then eventually she got me, or I just woke up. I'm not particularly sure. I only know she was within 2 feet of me when I woke up. I can describe more of the scenery as well if anyone would like, as long as it stays in my brain. A couple notes about the girl. The first time I don't believe she was a girl, I think was just an abject monster. It's only in the second visit that she took human form, which I would place at being about 10 years old and in 1700s clothing. When she's out stalking, she doesn't look like this ghostly girl. However, she always appears as something cute from far away. This time it was a floating dolphin. The final note on her is that whenever she is close, she sings in French. I do not know nor speak French, yet the song seems to be layered, complex, and real. Does anyone else have dreams like this, or any insight about this world? Or perhaps maybe you've visited this manor as well.
OP here. Appreciate all of the anons sharing their dreams and nightmares. I'm going to share some less recent but more disturbing nightmares I've had. I call these the teeth dreams. Not going to Greentext this one. The first of these was a nightmare where all of my teeth were falling out. I was physically spitting them out, my spit being incredibly bloody. Some were filled with holes, some were broken in half or had bone spur things growing out of them. I was on the kitchen floor sobbing while it happened. The worst part of this was that I had family members just standing around me watching this, saying I should go to a dentist or the ER while I was spitting my teeth out. I had a similar but separate nightmare from this. My teeth were rotting and melting into decaying goo instead of being bloody and jagged. I kept spitting them out until my entire side of my jawbone with multiple rotten teeth were spit out. I'm honestly not sure which was worse.
I'm not entirely sure if this belongs here, but it's about a reoccurring nightmare. Maybe I'm not the first to experience and voice this. Hopefully I'm not the first. It's not about monsters or ghosts. I wouldn't even say it's paranormal rather than simply extraordinary. It's about a maze with spotless mirrors lining my surroundings. A maze that every time I walk into takes longer than before to get out. It usually begins just like any story, a normal setting, an ordinary day. Every time it is starring someone I'm becoming close to. There is always an oddly real cast or set of people that appear according to a distorted perception I have of them. I don't mean distorted as in mangled, disturbed, or anything negative really. I mean warped, bent out of shape. It's how I see them but amplified in some aspects and obfuscated in others. In previous occasions it has been my parents, girlfriend, friends, and other relatives. All people I have bonded with and sometimes, regrettably, have even strayed away from them afterwards. This time it happened to be someone I work with, a great guy, very charismatic and easy to talk to. Needless to say, it felt like we became friends to some extent. In my nightmare, which later becomes a night terror, he talks and gives and does a lot of things only a close friend would do. At work, he's not even given me so much as a pencil or a pen, yet here, he gave me a watch. I couldn't even talk to or even interact with him as the guy I know in real life because of this. It was too close for comfort, like that one kid in class in grade school who you give the slightest amount of attention to and then refuses to stay away. I say this as if it was something everyone knew about. Maybe it was just me who's experienced this multiple times. They're good people. I just can't possibly become this close to someone like that of my own free will. It's incredibly hard for me to differentiate between this nightmare and real life. I see it as a sort of lucid dream. I'm fully aware that I am somewhere in my mind. Of course, this realization doesn't come until my friend asks me if I want to go to the cafeteria for lunch. Thankfully, there wasn't much happening between the beginning and my realization. Even after I'm able to make sense of my situation, this dream I'm in tries its best to draw me back and turn itself into my reality, like a caged beast, starved and ready for its meal. One thing it won't let away. Of course here, I'm his meal. The beast is clawing away at me, and the cold, moist air it breathes makes me nauseous. Even more so when in front of me I see my high school cafeteria, a couple of recognizable faces, my coworker, and the best-looking food I've ever seen. It only emphasized the fact it didn't want me to leave. The day goes by. I get some work done. I'll even work on some project for fun and get a couple of chores or errands out of the way. Although I'm fully aware this isn't reality, I don't see much point in fighting it anymore. Like I said, it isn't the first time I'm trapped here. Not only am I being toyed with and clawed at, I'm also chained up in a giant cave. At around 4 p.m., it felt like 4 p.m., I can't be sure. I went back to my office. He walks inside. He's tall and well-built. I don't mean toned or maybe even fit, but his frame would be promising if he was any younger. He's wearing a green t-shirt and jeans, a little too casual, but who am I to tell my nightmare what's right and wrong? Without even seeing his face, I know it's him coming around the corner into my doorway from his baldness. Only bald person there. I sit up and relax. His clothing made it feel even easier. There was no restraint from leather belts or criminally non-athletic khaki pants or some sort of variant. His slightly slender body makes him somehow look friendlier. He sits down. "We have an extra hour for lunch," he says, tapping on the armrest of the chair with a pen. Confused as to what that has anything to do with whatever was relevant even during the day, I say. "Don't you have work to do or something? Work you could get done in that extra hour?" Almost in a sly tone, he hints that it may have been him that persuaded someone to do this. My biggest question was why we were being treated like children, like it was some form of reward or proof that there is trust between the authority and the student. There was awkward silence. I imagine it must have been for him. I was perfectly comfortable tidying up my area. He sat there, slouching, with his hand supporting his head and his elbow on the armrest. His eyes stared at the baseboard's dot like there was some tiny writing he was trying to read from a distance. There was just enough silence until a woman showed up. A big woman, the kind that's psychological. No amount of bad genes can make you that fat without you putting some effort into it. I'm being rude, but the truth is, this woman has helped me out before, in real life. But now, standing in my doorway, was a stranger. Our eyes met. More like my eyes met her. She was staring daggers at me. I stand up, fix my shirt, and take a few steps until I'm at an appropriate distance from her. "Oh, cool. You've got let's call him Connor." Connor cut off his sentence as soon as he realized I wasn't leaving but rather dealing with someone. He sits there. His shirt somewhat blends in with the ugly greenish carpet. He becomes part of the background. We aren't the kind of workplace that deals with a lot of people. Her being there was odd. Why wasn't I told someone was here to speak to me, and how did she even get in? Anyone can walk into the building, but you do need a key fob to enter our floor. She gave me the creeps. Mainly because she simply stood there. I might have been fine before, but now I was extremely uncomfortable. I repeatedly asked her if she needed something. The third time I gave up. Connor now decides to help. He stands up, goes around the chair, and put on a smile. A fake one, but seemingly real enough to say he's not hostile. "Do you need a phone, some form of help? I'm not sure we can do much, but we can definitely try," he says in a very warm and caring tone. He was good at this. He could convey emotions through his speech well, even though in this situation and many others they were mostly false. Her face is still frozen, not really saying much, just a stern look. She's also literally not saying much, or anything at all. Her black blouse with pink flowers, yoga pants, and sandals made her stick out like a sore thumb, yet no one seemed to notice. Since he spoke to her until now, a good minute has gone by. He decides to try again. This time he carefully places his hand on the back of her arm before he speaks. In the blink of an eye, so much happened. As soon as his hand touched her arm, it felt like several minutes of movement went by in the fraction of a second. I tried processing this, I tried. Like you try to fix someone else's computer problems. You think about it for a second and move on as if there was no immediate fix. From the little time I put into thinking of this, it felt like I had seen the most gruesome way of murder. It felt like she bludgeoned Connor. Her eyes black and mouth is gaping. Also black, like voids. Not like she was simply missing whatever soft tissue filled those holes, but like reality was missing. A black so deep it seemed like it absorbed all light, touching it and surrounding it. Around the edges it diffused and even looked like it was dripping, like a heavy could of vapor. Her movements weren't human. It was more like a stop-motion film. They were stiff. That and the fact it happened so quickly made it a lot more disturbing than it should have been. After this, I was sitting down. I did not walk to a chair and sat down. I did not fold my legs and sit on the ground. I was simply sitting. I used to be standing by the doorway of an office. I was now sitting on a couch that was in the living room of my childhood home. I could feel the gray upholstery. The cream color of the walls was all too real. I adjusted to the smell of detergent from the laundry room not too far, to the dim lights, to the sounds of my clothes rubbing against the cushions. I didn't have much time to be confused by this. It was taken away prematurely by Connor. His slender body was sitting on an office chair we had by a desk in that same room. "I thought you'd like this. It's a late birthday gift," he says. He hands me a box. I open it. It's a watch. When I say it, the weirdest question crossed my mind. Am I not a child? I was. I looked down at my hands and saw they were decades younger. They were the hands of a child, 12 at most. I wasn't all that shocked by this. All things considered, it made some sense. I was in my childhood home after all. The watch was a Seiko for those of you interested. I cannot remember the model. The watch face was white. That as much as I remember. Connor started talking about something. I can't recall the details. He went on for a while. He went on and on. Things seemed fine, but she showed up to ruin it again. As ridiculous as it may seem. The woman shot through a window beside me. She had the look I saw moments before I was no longer in my office. Her face was empty, like the boy in the picture. Although she jumped through the window, she didn't get very far. She gets up and begins screaming, not in an aggressive way. It would be better described as pain. It was a horrifying shriek of pain. It was honestly worse than a real person in excruciating pain. It was much worse than a person living their last moments alive being mutilated. The air began to fall. It felt like it was so heavy it fell too low to reach my nose. I was too shocked to pay a lot of attention to my surrounding, but I could notice Connor scrambling to make his way out of the room. The woman looked around for a bit. She seemed disoriented after her entrance. I stood behind her, not knowing what to do. I tried talking. It was yelling, really. I was yelling for anyone to help. No one was around anymore. By no one, I mean the one other person that seemingly existed in this reality. It was no longer a simple dream to me. I started to feel like it was where I was supposed to be. I yelled and yelled. Nothing came of it. The only thing I got was a slight realization. She couldn't hear me. I decided to make a run for it. I ran towards the door. It wasn't very far. As soon as she saw me, she charged at me. She wasn't any faster than she should have been. It was somewhat calming knowing that she was still somewhat human. Or at least, I thought she was. As soon as I made it to the doorway, I closed the door. She didn't push or even make the slightest attempt at opening the door. It was quiet. I finally got a chance to look around. Everything looked washed out. Colors were slowly leaving. In their place, a dull black and white. Connor rushes back to where I was from my right, the kitchen. He insisted on going to check. I explained that although she didn't seem dangerous, it wasn't a good idea. I lied. The image of his mangled body staining the green carpet of my office, a dark color with his blood, was in my head. He insisted, and I let him in. No sound came out of that room. The screaming had ceased long ago. I heard no sound or felt any movement. I worried the same had happened again, but this time there was no reset. My father was now in this. He rushed down the stairs to my left. He asked what the hell's been going on. There was a sense of relief. A weight had been lifted. Seeing him was the best thing to happen yet. I explained everything, from the beginning until now. He seemed confused. I couldn't blame him. Before I could explain, she burst through the door. I was standing in front of it. I hit my head on the floor. The pain was killing me, but I stood up out of fear. She lay there, lifeless. Now that the door was open, I could see inside. Connor was no longer himself. His face was like hers. He sat on that office chair without moving. At the angle he was at, he should have been able to see us, yet he didn't react. I briskly walked to the back door. I decided on leaving the house through the backyard. My father followed. The entire place was dull. There was no more color. The sky was black. I reached for the doorknob but saw another person standing outside. Like them. I started losing it. It was too much to handle now. I back off and turn around. There were more. A few were behind me. Wherever I turn my head, more of them appear. My father and I make our way through the bodies, staring at us. I trip on the shoe of one. I think I know why. I hear my father say from the front entrance. I get up and run to him. Or so I thought I did. In my head, I was running and screaming, why? I kept asking why this is happening, but of course it wasn't. I couldn't move. As soon as I was on my feet, I felt like I was suffocating. My arms by my side and my body stiff as a board. My neck was the only part of my body that I could move. I looked at my father. He sees me and moves towards me, quickly, without wasting a second. He almost throws all his weight on me when he places his hand on my shoulder to try to shake me. His expression changed. Now it looked calm. His face was almost emotionless. Slowly he made his way upstairs until he was out of my vision. I remained like this for hours. The feeling of suffocation only got worse. I am now awake. The issue is, the nightmare wasn't over. This wasn't at night, this was in the afternoon when I decided to have a nap. Every single time this happens, no matter when I fall asleep, I wake up at around the same time, late at night. Every time this happens, the nightmare lingers a little longer. The feeling of suffocation and the colorless atmosphere is still there. As soon as I woke up, I tried using my phone to call anyone. I pressed the on button several times, but it didn't turn on. It still had charge left. It worked a while later when everything seemed fine. It feels like that dream is using the last bit of power it has over my thoughts to pull me back in. It's been a while since I've woken up, but there's still a low rumbling noise I didn't mention but was there whenever she appeared. The feeling of being watched by 1,000 lifeless eyes is still here with me. I know it sounds stupid, but when this nightmare felt so real, something as stupid as this is horrifying. I know this won't be the last time I'll be up against this beast, but at least I have some time to rest and be worry-free. Feel free to share your thoughts or whatever. I posted here because I didn't know what was the appropriate board. This was mainly just a way to rationalize a dream that felt like it went on for days. This was a very compressed version of what actually happened.
I used to have a recurring dream genre of dreams for years and years. Be in my backyard, midnight with a blood moon, knee-deep in mud, have shovel in my hand digging. Look around and the entire backyard is covered in holes, some flooded with mud. Notice a partial human body in the hole I'm digging. Look around the backyard, every hole is filled with corpses and body parts I keep digging. Have a feeling of oppressive dread, like something is watching me. Sometimes I run away and try to escape, sometimes I just stay digging. When I do run, I know something is chasing me through the neighborhood, but I never actually see what's chasing me. I also had alternative versions of this dream where, instead of being in the backyard, I would be in the house and I would be shoving bodies into the walls and then putting up drywall or digging holes in the basement, or even hiding or taking out canning jars of human body parts. Later in life, I spoke with my sister and she used to have the same kinds of dreams, and we kind of figured out that our father may have been killing our pets. And I had many very odd interactions throughout my childhood with my father. Who knows if it's real or if our father was maybe involved in much worse. But there were definitely demons attacking my sister and I throughout our childhoods.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check the Odyssey and Rumble pages for separate archives of previous broadcasts.